When we talk about the future of humanity, it's impossible to ignore the role of two of the world's most powerful nations, India and China. For decades, the narrative has been rivalry. But today, we are beginning to see something far more powerful: cooperation. The recent meeting between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Xi Jinping carries a message that goes beyond diplomacy. It shows us that collaboration can triumph over competition, even when global trade tensions, like the rising U.S. tariffs on Indian goods, try to disrupt stability. Partnership between these two nations has the potential to reshape global economics. Think about it: two populations of over 1 billion people each, two innovation hubs, two rising technological forces. If they choose to compete endlessly, the world feels the pressure. But if they collaborate, they can set the direction for trade, sustainability, and growth for generations. It's not about who wins against the other. It's about how both can win together. Imagine supply chains that don't break down under political stress, trade routes that serve billions, and clean energy systems built at scale that make the planet more sustainable. This is not a dream, it's a decision waiting to be acted upon. The U.S. tariffs create immediate challenges, but they also create an opening, a chance for India and China to lead with independence, strength, and vision. Together, they can stabilize world trade, invest in innovation, and create a framework that is less vulnerable to unilateral policies and external shocks. The message is simple: the future will not be written by rivalry, but by the courage to work together when the world needs it most. For decades, the narrative surrounding India and China has been defined by competition. From border disputes to technological races, the world has often perceived these two giants as locked in a zero-sum game. But if we pause and look at the bigger picture, a different path emerges, one that is not about outpacing the other, but about moving forward together. This is the essence of collaboration over competition. Competition, by its nature, fuels progress, but it also creates friction, mistrust, and instability. When nations as large and influential as India and China compete aggressively, the ripple effects are felt across the entire globe. Trade routes become uncertain, global markets destabilize, and smaller nations are often caught in the middle of power struggles. On the other hand, collaboration magnifies strengths. Instead of working against each other, working side by side allows both countries to leverage their unique capabilities for a much larger impact. India brings to the table a young, dynamic workforce, a rapidly digitizing economy, and growing expertise in software, services, and innovation. China contributes its advanced manufacturing ecosystem, massive infrastructure capabilities, and leadership in areas like renewable energy and artificial intelligence. Separately, both nations are powerful, but together, they form a partnership that could redefine the very architecture of global trade and development. Consider how collaboration could transform supply chains. Instead of building parallel systems that compete and clash, India and China could develop complementary networks that serve not only their people but also billions worldwide. Imagine technology standards co-created by both nations, affordable, scalable, and accessible. Instead of fighting for dominance in clean energy, what if they pooled resources to accelerate the transition away from fossil fuels? Such actions wouldn't just benefit them, they would provide solutions to global challenges that no single nation can solve alone. This idea of collaboration is not just about economics, it is also about trust. When leaders from India and China choose dialogue over dispute, they send a powerful message to the world that humanity's greatest challenges demand cooperation, not confrontation. Whether it's climate change, food security, or technological disruption, the problems we face today are too large to be solved through rivalry. Of course, collaboration does not mean erasing differences. It means acknowledging them and still choosing partnership when the stakes are high. It means shifting from a mindset of us versus them to one of we for the future. The decision to collaborate is not about weakness, it is about strength. True strength lies in recognizing that progress is faster and more sustainable when built together. In the long run, collaboration over competition creates stability. It builds trust not only between India and China, but also in the wider international community. It inspires confidence among investors, reassures smaller nations, and helps establish a global order that is more balanced and equitable. By prioritizing collaboration, India and China demonstrate that leadership in the 21st century is not about dominating others. It is about lifting each other up and moving humanity forward. Global trade is not a static system. It is constantly shaped by shifting alliances, policies, and technological revolutions. Over the past century, it has largely been influenced and often dominated by Western powers. But today, as the world faces rising protectionism, particularly with moves like the recent U.S. tariffs on Indian goods, the global trading order is under stress. This creates both a challenge and an opportunity for India and China. Together, they have the power to reshape global trade into something more stable, inclusive, and resilient. For decades, supply chains have been highly dependent on a narrow set of nations. A disruption in one country has often cascaded into global crises, whether in food, energy, or technology. The pandemic highlighted just how fragile these systems are. Now, with tariffs and restrictions becoming tools of economic competition, countries are being forced to rethink their trade strategies. In this moment of uncertainty, India and China have a unique chance to set a new direction. When India and China collaborate in trade, they don't just influence their own economies, they influence the entire global marketplace. Together, they represent nearly 40% of the world's population and a significant share of global GDP. That means any agreement, partnership, or joint initiative between them has ripple effects across continents. If they can create frameworks that lower costs, stabilize supply chains, and expand access to markets, the rest of the world will benefit. One critical area where they can reshape trade is technology and digital infrastructure. India has emerged as a leader in software, digital services, and financial technology, while China has built unmatched capacity in hardware, manufacturing, and logistics. If they bridge this divide, we could see the rise of trade systems that are faster, smarter, and more efficient than anything we've known before. Imagine a global digital payment system built on Indian innovation and powered by Chinese hardware, affordable, reliable, and scalable to even the smallest economies. Another area is renewable energy and green trade. Both India and China are making massive investments in solar, wind, and electric mobility. Instead of competing to dominate these markets, a joint approach could drive down costs worldwide and accelerate the global shift to sustainable energy. That's not just trade, it's leadership in solving humanity's biggest challenge, climate change. And then there is the matter of geopolitical independence. By strengthening their trade ties, India and China reduce reliance on Western-controlled systems. They can build alternative trade routes, such as through Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, that bypass traditional choke points of global commerce. This not only diversifies global trade, but also ensures that unilateral actions like sudden tariffs do not destabilize entire regions. Most importantly, reshaping global trade is about creating fairness. For too long, developing nations have felt excluded or exploited by systems that favor a select few. India and China, both once colonized and marginalized in the global order, now have the chance to champion inclusivity. By designing trade that benefits emerging economies, they can shift the system from one of exploitation to one of empowerment. In conclusion, when India and China move beyond rivalry and embrace their shared responsibility, they can do more than trade goods. They can trade stability, opportunity, and hope for billions of people. By reshaping global trade, they don't just protect their own futures, they redefine the future of the entire planet. When we look at the arc of human progress, population has always been a driver of possibility. A large population means more talent, more creativity, and more capacity to innovate. India and China together represent nearly 2.8 billion people, close to 40% of the world's population. This is not just a statistic, it is a force that has the potential to reshape the entire global economy and accelerate humanity's future. For decades, population was viewed as a challenge. The narrative was about how to feed, educate, and provide for such vast numbers of people. But today, the perspective is shifting. Population is no longer just about numbers, it is about potential. A large, youthful population like India's represents energy, ideas, and the courage to experiment. Meanwhile, China's population, though aging, brings decades of experience, industrial strength, and technological advancement. Together, they form a complementary balance, youthful dynamism and seasoned expertise. Consider innovation. Innovation is not born in isolation, it is born where there are people asking questions, solving problems, and experimenting with solutions. India, with its growing startup ecosystem and rapid digital transformation, is becoming a global hub for ideas in fintech, software, and artificial intelligence. China, with its vast manufacturing capacity, infrastructure, excellence, and dominance in areas like 5G and renewable energy, transforms ideas into scalable realities. When these two strengths converge, the potential for breakthrough innovation is limitless. Imagine a future where an Indian startup develops a revolutionary healthcare AI platform, and Chinese companies provide the hardware, data centers, and distribution channels to scale it across the globe. Or consider clean energy. India's vast solar resources combined with China's solar panel manufacturing dominance could accelerate the transition to green energy, not in decades, but in years. These synergies are not hypothetical. They are within reach if collaboration takes precedence over competition. But population is not just about numbers or economic value. It is also about human capital. The youth of India and the engineers of China represent not only workers, but dreamers and creators. Education systems, research institutions, and cross-border knowledge exchanges can unlock this human capital in ways we have not yet seen. A student in Bengaluru collaborating with a researcher in Shanghai could design technologies that transform how the world lives, works, and connects. At the same time, both nations face similar challenges: job creation, sustainable urbanization, healthcare access, and resource management. These challenges, when tackled together, become opportunities for scalable innovation. If solutions are designed for billions in India and China, they can be adapted anywhere in the world, whether it's affordable housing, renewable energy grids, or digital financial systems for the unbanked. The global narrative often frames population growth as a burden, but India and China can flip that narrative. Their populations are not liabilities, they are assets. Assets that, when directed toward innovation, can generate progress at a scale unmatched by any other region. The future of global innovation will not be dictated by a single nation, but by the collective will of billions. India and China, as population and innovation powerhouses, hold the keys to creating that future. The question is not whether they have the capacity. The question is whether they have the courage to unlock it together. In today's interconnected world, supply chains are the invisible lifelines that keep economies alive. From the food on our tables to the smartphones in our pockets, almost everything depends on complex global supply networks. Yet, as recent years have shown, these systems are fragile. The pandemic exposed their vulnerability, geopolitical tensions disrupted trade routes, and tariffs continue to create instability. For India and China, two of the largest players in global trade, the challenge is clear: build supply chains that are not only efficient but also resilient. Resilience means more than just surviving disruptions. It means designing systems that adapt, recover, and even grow stronger in the face of crisis. For too long, the global supply chain has been optimized purely for cost and speed. That model works in times of stability but collapses under stress, when ports shut down, when borders tighten, or when sanctions strike. Companies and nations face shortages, rising prices, and lost opportunities. India and China, if they choose collaboration over competition, can create a new model, one where resilience is the foundation. India's unique strengths in logistics, a growing digital infrastructure, and geographic positioning that connects it to both the East and the West. China, meanwhile, has unparalleled experience in large-scale manufacturing, advanced infrastructure, and global shipping networks. Combined, they can build a supply chain architecture that balances efficiency with robustness. For example, diversification of production hubs is essential. Instead of concentrating manufacturing in a single region, India and China could create distributed production networks across Asia. This would ensure that even if one hub faces disruption, the others can maintain continuity. Similarly, joint investments in ports, railways, and digital tracking systems could enhance trade flows, reduce bottlenecks, and increase transparency across borders. Another critical element of resilience is technology integration. Smart supply chains powered by AI, blockchain, and Internet of Things (IoT) can predict disruptions before they occur. Imagine a system where sensors on shipping containers instantly signal delays, where blockchain ensures transparency in transactions, and where AI reroutes shipments in real time to avoid political or logistical risks. India's software innovation combined with China's hardware dominance could make such futuristic supply chains a reality. But resilience is not just about economics, it is also about security. In times of global tension, nations often weaponize trade. Export bans, sanctions, and tariffs can paralyze economies that rely too heavily on external systems. A resilient India-China supply chain reduces this vulnerability. It creates a safety net, not just for themselves, but for emerging economies that depend on stable trade. By offering alternatives to Western-dominated routes and frameworks, they can democratize global commerce. Most importantly, supply chain resilience built by India and China can provide confidence to the world. Investors will feel secure knowing that trade will not collapse under pressure. Smaller nations will trust that essential goods like medicines, energy, resources, and food will keep flowing even in times of crisis. And the global economy will have a buffer against the unpredictability of politics and pandemics. Resilient supply chains are not built overnight. They require trust, long-term vision, and the courage to prioritize collaboration over short-term competition. But if India and China succeed, they will not only safeguard their own growth, they will become the architects of a more stable, reliable, and inclusive global economy. Growth has always been the measure of national progress. GDP numbers, industrial output, and export figures often dominate discussions about economic success. But in the 21st century, growth cannot be judged by speed alone. It must also be judged by sustainability. For India and China, two nations with massive populations and rising global influence, the question is no longer whether they can grow fast, but whether they can grow responsibly, ensuring that progress today does not compromise the well-being of tomorrow. Both nations stand at a crossroads. China's rapid industrialization lifted hundreds of millions out of poverty, but also brought environmental costs, air pollution, rising carbon emissions, and overuse of natural resources. India, with its young population and growing economy, faces similar challenges as it industrializes at scale. If both countries pursue unchecked growth, the consequences will not be confined within their borders. They will affect the entire planet. That is why sustainable growth is not just an option for India and China, it is a global necessity. Sustainable growth means finding a balance between economic progress, environmental stewardship, and social responsibility. For India, this could mean doubling down on renewable energy projects, especially solar power, where it already has a natural advantage. For China, it could mean leading the world in green technologies like electric vehicles, battery storage, and large-scale wind farms. Together, their collaboration could make clean energy not just available, but affordable for the entire world. Consider the scale of possibility. If India and China decide to align their policies on carbon reduction, clean energy infrastructure, and sustainable manufacturing, they can create economies of scale that drive down global costs. A solar panel manufactured in China and deployed in India could be part of a global clean energy revolution. Electric buses, batteries, and smart grids code developed between them could redefine how cities across the world function. Instead of competing for dominance in these markets, cooperation would accelerate humanity's progress toward a net zero future. But sustainable growth is not only about energy, it is also about people. For nations as large as India and China, growth must be inclusive. It must reach rural communities, empower women, provide access to education, and reduce inequality. A sustainable future means that prosperity does not belong to just the urban elite, but extends to villages, small businesses, and marginalized groups. Joint initiatives like technology sharing for agriculture or digital health systems could help improve the quality of life for billions. Moreover, sustainable growth requires long-term thinking. Short-term profits often push countries to overexploit resources. But if India and China adopt shared sustainability goals such as cleaner air, safer water, and protected ecosystems, they can show the world that development does not have to destroy the environment. They can lead by example, demonstrating that it is possible to scale industries, build infrastructure, and drive innovation while respecting the planet. The world is watching. Climate change, resource depletion, and environmental degradation are no longer distant concerns. They are daily realities. If India and China choose collaboration, they can become global leaders in sustainable development. If they choose rivalry, they risk accelerating the very crisis they will also suffer from. True leadership in this century will not be measured by who grows the fastest, but by who grows the wisest. Sustainable growth is not only about securing prosperity for today's citizens, it is about ensuring that future generations inherit a planet capable of supporting their dreams. In the modern world, power is not only measured by military might or economic output, it is also measured by independence. Nations that are truly strong are those that can chart their own course, make their own decisions, and resist undue pressure from external powers. This concept, often called strategic autonomy, is particularly vital for India and China. For two countries with long histories of resisting foreign domination and exploitation, the ability to act independently on the global stage is not just a policy choice, it is part of their identity. Strategic autonomy means freedom from dependence. For decades, global trade systems, financial institutions, and even technological standards have been shaped primarily by Western powers. This has often left developing nations, including India and China, in a position where they must adapt to frameworks not designed with their interests in mind. By strengthening cooperation with each other, India and China can reduce reliance on these external systems and create pathways that reflect their own priorities and values. Take trade, for example. The recent wave of tariffs imposed by the United States has highlighted how vulnerable economies can be when they are overly dependent on a single market, or a small group of trading partners. By deepening economic ties with one another and expanding networks across Asia, Africa, and Latin America, India and China can shield themselves from unilateral disruptions. In doing so, they not only protect their economies, but also build a more diversified and inclusive global trade system. Technology is another frontier where strategic autonomy is essential. Much of the digital infrastructure in the world today relies on standards and systems controlled by a handful of Western corporations. If India and China collaborate on building their own digital ecosystems, covering everything from 5G networks to payment platforms, they can secure their technological independence. This doesn't mean isolating from the rest of the world, but rather ensuring that their growth and security are not held hostage to external forces. Energy is another key dimension. Both nations import vast amounts of fossil fuels, which exposes them to geopolitical risks. By jointly investing in renewable energy, electric mobility, and sustainable infrastructure, they can reduce dependence on unstable oil markets and achieve greater energy sovereignty. Strategic autonomy here means not being at the mercy of fluctuating prices or geopolitical conflicts in distant regions. At a deeper level, strategic autonomy is also about diplomatic freedom. Nations that are overly dependent economically or militarily often find themselves pressured into supporting policies that may not align with their long-term interests. India and China, by building stronger bilateral cooperation, can resist such pressure and act according to their own visions for peace, development, and stability. This autonomy enables them to say no when global powers attempt to divide or manipulate, and to say yes when collaboration aligns with their goals. Of course, autonomy does not mean isolation. It is not about cutting ties with the world. It is about engaging from a position of strength and choice. Strategic autonomy ensures that decisions are made on the basis of national interest, not external coercion. For India and China, this is about reclaiming agency in a global system that has long been dominated by others. By cooperating to build resilience in trade, technology, and energy, they can achieve true independence, not the independence of standing alone, but the independence of standing strong together. As we step into a future shaped by uncertainty, one truth becomes clear: the world can no longer afford rivalry where collaboration is possible. The relationship between India and China is not just a matter of regional politics, it is a matter of global destiny. With their combined populations, innovation ecosystems, and economic strength, they hold the power to influence trade, technology, sustainability, and peace on a scale unmatched by any other partnership. Competition may deliver short-term wins, but collaboration offers long-term transformation. By choosing to work together, India and China can stabilize global trade, build resilient supply chains, lead the clean energy revolution, and set an example of strategic autonomy that inspires other nations. More than that, They can redefine what leadership means in the 21st century, not dominance, but cooperation, not exclusion, but inclusivity, not exploitation, but empowerment. The recent dialogue between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi marks more than a diplomatic gesture. It signals the possibility of a new narrative, a narrative where former rivals become partners in progress, a narrative where two giants rise, not to overshadow the world, but to uplift it. The future is not yet written. But if India and China choose the path of partnership, they will not only shape the destiny of their own nations, they will shape the destiny of the world.